Let's talk about Sonic, the fastest thing alive and the star of many games, many cartoons, and many comics. The blue blur has been around for a while now, and he's changed a lot throughout the years. I'm Dog Shoddy, and in this video, I'm going to be breaking down the art styles of Sonic the Hedgehog. This is Art Stylist. My challenge? Cover not one, but 4 art styles featured in the Sonic franchise. This isn't a video on character design. Here, you'll be learning line and rendering techniques that can be applied to your own drawings, whether they're Sonic related or not. To showcase these styles, I'll be drawing OCs, or original characters, inspired by the world of Sonic. I took to social media and asked the Sonic fanbase to show me their own designs. And out of more than 1,000 responses, I've selected 4 to reinterpret and feature in this special episode. So let's pick up our stylus and get started with our first character. The first art style we'll be covering is the classic art style, best known for its use in the first 3 Sonic games and the modern 2D entries such as Mania and Origins. Although the character was designed by Naoto Oshima, the art style itself was rendered by Akira Watanabe. Our representative OC for the classic style is Silk the Silverfish, designed by Burnt Beebs. At a glance, the first thing to note is that this is a lineless art style. The rendering is done with an airbrush and features hard drop shadows. To top it off, the final image has a grainy texture resembling paper. We'll start by breaking these down one by one. When a style is lineless, no strokes are being used. The character is made up of blocks of color separated by changes in tone. An exception is made for eyelashes, which do in fact use lines. With our sketch as a guide, block out each individual piece of the drawing with a flat color. To keep things organized, I've given each section their own separate layer. Rendering in the classic Sonic art style involves using an airbrush to build up your shadows. The transition between the lightest and darkest color is smooth, like a gradient, and it will follow alongside the contour, the curve that illustrates a change in depth. If applicable, the character's snout uses pillow shading, where the object has a shadow coming from all sides similar to a pillow being lit from the front. When using this type of shading, I try to keep one side heavier than the other. To add more depth to your shading, we'll softly erase the shadows that are flush with the edge, creating an effect reminiscent of reflective light. The style also features drop shadows visible underneath central parts of the character such as the head, and also includes areas such as the ears and the nose, and in Silk's case, her antennae and whiskers. These shadows can have one of 2 appearances depending on where they're placed. Drop shadows placed south of an object have a hard edge and are slightly translucent, and drop shadows placed north are airbrushed in. Now that we've learned the basics of this style, let's put it into practice. We'll start by drawing a hand with a single block of color using only shadows. No lines required. What you want to do is work from the back to the front with a technique I like to call shade and erase. Using a basic outline as my guide, I'll start by shading in the index finger, which is positioned in the rear. I'll use the airbrush tool to build my shadow following the contour of the finger, cleaning up the gradient with an airbrush eraser tool, and following up with erasing the edges of the shadow, creating a reflective light. Because there's an object in front of us, I'll use the same airbrush to create its northern drop shadow. To finish, I'll use a hard eraser to create my outline, separating the index finger from the middle. With dedicated layers for each finger, you can repeat this process until you have the entire hand fully rendered, drop shadows included. Once you get a hang of the shading process, you can finish off your drawing with a paper-like texture. Most art programs are able to generate noise textures that can do the job, but if you're unable to create your own, it's pretty easy to find one online. Applying this texture is as simple as setting the layer property to overlay, but you're free to experiment with other settings however you like. The second art style we'll be covering is a Sonic Battle art style, best known for its use in the Game Boy Advance installment of the same name. The illustrator for this game is Hisanobu Komatani, and the OC that will represent this style is Jaws the Shark, designed by Mr. Owendigo. This style is known for being almost entirely polygonal, both lines and lighting, and the lines themselves are also selectively outlined based on their main color. Let's break it down. Small note about the color palette. This style doesn't use a shade of black that's commonly seen in digital art. You'll notice this when looking at existing character art for the game, so the use of this color isn't required. The line work of the battle style is 99% polygonal, which means each line is its own shape made up of multiple line segments. Think of it like connect the dots, but the final drawing is the shape of a line. The weight of these lines fluctuate, which means the thickness changes as a line moves, allowing you to place your dots freely. The sole exception to this polygonal rule would be the iris of your character's eyes. This shape would be the only shape in the drawing with curved lines. The color of this outline would be a darker hue of your character's primary color. For example, a blue character like Sonic would have an outline that's dark blue. Following this pattern, the outline for Tails is a dark yellow and Knuckles is a dark red. If your character lacks a primary color, you're free to choose whatever color you want. Characters with black as their primary color, such as Shadow the Hedgehog, are a special case. These characters don't use true black for their outlines or any shade of black for that matter. Instead, they use a dark purple hue for their line work. The shading style of Sonic Battle is cell shading or cartoon shading, where the shadows consist of one flat color that follows a contour of an object. Unlike normal cell shading where the contour is curved, we'll be following the same rules as the line work and marker paths polygonally. The same can be said with our highlights because they too act as one polygonal shape following the outer edge opposite of our core shadow. Now let's look at a neat trick we can do to make our highlights and shadows more visually interesting. And to help us, we need to look at the character art for Sonic. You can see in this particular area here where the shadow tapers out. The artist hatched out a few lines. The goal here was to make the shadow look like it's fading out. But since we're limited to a single tone for the shadows, we can't use gradients or transparencies. To circumvent this restriction, the art uses an example of dithering. When your palette is limited to only a few colors, sometimes you have to trick the eye into thinking it's seeing something completely different. It's easy to picture this with red and blue squares. On their own, they're two completely different colors, but scatter them in a repeating pattern and your eye will eventually see purple. It's the same in this case. By hatching out our lines in the shadow, we're basically faking a new color, one that sits in between our base and its darker tone. You can see more examples of this when looking at characters like Shadow with his inhibitor rings. You can see the transition between the darker color to the highlight and back again. And you can also see it in the reflective lighting of Sonic and Shadow's attack art. We can see the highlight change its hue, then go back to normal. A clever trick that not many artists think about. Feel free to experiment with this technique when drawing your own characters.
The race is about to begin!
Our third art style is the Rider style, known exclusively for its use in the first installment of the Sonic Rider series. The artist behind this 2D style is Hideaki Moriya, and our representative OC is Spark the Mink, designed by Farazi Bear. When we look at the character art for Riders, we see that the style consists of pencil outlines, varying in weight depending on their usage. The character is hard lit and cell shaded, with its contour selectively outlined with our aforementioned pencil tool and its shadows hatched in. The line work of Sonic Riders is a hand-drawn look, which can be replicated digitally or drawn physically and scanned in. We'll be using 3 line weights: light, medium, and heavy, with each one fulfilling a specific purpose. Our thinnest line is used for the general outline of the character's features. Everything including changes in color, such as stripes, would use this line weight. Our medium line weight is used for lighting, which would include the path of the contour and our hatching. Our heaviest line weight is used to give a bold outline to our overall silhouette. Just like with the Sonic Battle art style, the color of our line work depends on our character's main color. Sonic's main color is blue and Spark's main color is green, so the color of their outlines would be dark blue and dark green respectively. However, not all of the line work is colored this way. The contour of the highlights are selectively outlined, and this color would be the same color as the highlight itself. So in short, all lines apart from the highlights follow the main color. The art style of Sonic Riders stands out with its use of hard lighting or harsh lighting, where the subject is lit directly from the front, creating a sharp contrast between bright light and dark shadow. If your character is in a 3/4 view, the side furthest from you would be mostly, if not completely, unlit. This works both ways, as the side closest to you would have very little shading done. The way our lighting is rendered is as simple as outlining the contour with the same tool we use for our general line work. Almost all existing line work within that contour would be erased and filled in with the darker hue of our main color. color. This color sits somewhere in between the base and the outline. Any line that acts as a divider between parts, you can keep. To complete the shadows, we'll finish with a layer of hatching, which involves drawing a series of parallel lines next to each other repeatedly. These lines use our medium weight and can also be drawn in sets. This means their length doesn't need to exceed the distance of the standard wrist movement. In all instances of hatching, our lines would be drawn in the direction of a // Highlights are done in a similar manner. Selectively outline the contour with the same color you use for your highlight and fill it in. The brush is the same brush we use for our general outline, and the color is a lighter tone of the color underneath. Unlike our shadows, we don't need a hatch on top, and we don't need to erase any existing line work inside the highlight. To finish off our picture, we'll add an outline to our silhouette using our heaviest line weight. For those who don't know, the silhouette is the entire space taken up by the character. Our outline will follow the path outside the silhouette, and if applicable, the inside as well.
Attention all units. Suspect seen heading south. Block all major roads and capture the suspect.
Our final art style for this video is the iconic adventure art style, best known for its use in the Sonic Adventure, Sonic Advance, and Sonic Rush series. The artist behind the style is Yuji Yukawa, and the style itself practically represents Sonic's modern era as a whole. The OC that I chose to showcase this art style is Cory the Hedgehog, designed by none other than Cory Hedgehog. There are minute differences between the style seen in Sonic Adventure 1 compared to the rest of the games, but as a whole they share a lot in common. The style uses a bold line that changes weight along its path, and its shadows are rendered with a curved gradient, topped off with a unique style of reflective lighting. As for the differences I previously mentioned, let's dive into it. When it comes to the adventure style, I'm tempted to describe the lines as fluctuating, but it's not as if the line weight changes randomly. More often than not, the line reaches its maximum weight at the apex. If you picture a single curve, the apex is usually somewhere in the middle. If we have a standard taper on both ends, the line weight will gradually increase as it reaches the center of the path, then decrease as it reaches its end. If the line reaches a point and suddenly changes direction, that point will be considered the apex and will therefore have the heaviest weight. You can find examples of this line weight change when looking at a character's hands. You often see it with their fingers or with the creases on their gloves. The adventure style also features rounded tangents. To clarify, a tangent is a line branching off another, and when a tangent is rounded, it means there are no sharp corners in the negative space, the space surrounding the lines. This is a stylistic choice that makes the lines look more loose or hand-drawn. The art for the first Sonic Adventure game had a lot of these rounded tangents, but they're used less often in the later games. How often it's used is up to you. Adventure style shading features a curved gradient, or an airbrush, followed by a large highlighted stroke acting as reflective light. If we have our outline, we'll first airbrush in our shadow, and follow it up by adding our highlight, which will sit in between the darkest part of the shadow and the line. This highlight will be the exact color as our base, and I would recommend creating a new layer and drawing our highlight there as opposed to simply erasing the shadow. I suggest this because our highlight has a completely separate highlight within itself, and it's easier to create the second highlight on its own dedicated layer. So let's break this down. The first highlight, our reflective light, consists of one large stroke of our base color. This will sit flush with our line work on top of our core shadow on its own dedicated layer. Now we will introduce our second highlight, which will usually be a lighter variation of our base color. With your airbrush, this second highlight will start from one end and move to the opposite. This shape will arc upward with its peak at the apex of the curve or the middle of the line. The base of this highlight will sit flush with the core shadow opposite from the outline. Naturally, the color white won't have the second highlight. At first glance, it seems as if the placements of these shadows are random, with multiple light sources coming from multiple directions. You can see some of the shadows set at the bottom, some at the sides, and even some at the top. I spent some time trying to make sense of this, and what I believe this art style is trying to do is mimic the look of embossing. When an image is embossed, it's slightly lifted from the surface, allowing it to stand out more. If you were to compare this to a real-life object, the closest would be the enamel pin. These types of pins have their outlines raised, and the lighting of our art style resembles the areas that lie in between the line and the color. So it would be less like picking a directional light source and more like splitting your character into multiple sections and sort of pillow shading based on the shape. Another difference between the two Sonic Adventure games is the use of drop shadows, a step that's skipped in the first installment. Just like before, if one object is in front of the other, it will cast a drop shadow onto the object behind it. The color of this drop shadow can be as simple as a translucent black tone, but you're free to experiment. In the case of Cory the Hedgehog, I've placed drop shadows under the usual spots, such as beneath the head, beneath the gloves, and beneath the shorts. Keep in mind that the drop shadows are influenced by their immediate surroundings, which means if an object is too far behind, you don't have to worry about placing a drop shadow. Thank you for watching, and special thanks to the 4 artists who allowed me to use their OCs for this episode. I also want to give a quick shout out to every artist who submitted their characters on Twitter. It was actually really difficult to narrow down my picks. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and subscribe for more art style related content. And comment below what art style you want to see for the next episode, which is on schedule to be released 5 years from now. Oh, you want me to go fast? That's Sonic's thing. Art Stylist, go
slow, baby.